It stands as one of the strangest enigmas of the ancient world. A city that once thrived with organized streets, advanced drainage systems, and multi-story homes then suddenly fell into silence. This is Mohenjo Daro, the jewel of the Indus Valley Civilization, a culture that flourished over 4,000 years ago in what is now Pakistan. At its peak, this city was home to tens of thousands of people. Its name, translated from Sindhi, means Mound of the Dead. And for good reason, because when archaeologists first uncovered it in the 1920s, they stumbled upon a mystery that remains unsolved even today. Imagine wide streets laid out in a perfect grid, centuries before Roman engineers did the same. Imagine brick houses with wells, bathing areas, and even what look like indoor toilets, all connected to a vast drainage system that rivals the infrastructure of some modern towns. Mohenjo Daro was no primitive village. It was a city ahead of its time, organized, advanced, and thriving. And then it wasn't. Somewhere around 1900 BCE, this flourishing culture collapsed. The people abandoned their homes, their streets, their temples. They left behind tools, jewelry, pottery, and bones. But they did not leave behind a clear explanation. When British and Indian archaeologists began excavating Mohenjo Daro, they uncovered something chilling. In several locations, they found skeletons lying in the streets, as if the inhabitants had fallen suddenly, without warning. Their positions suggested no attempt at burial. Some appeared to have been struck down where they stood. Even stranger, many of these skeletons were discovered with no obvious signs of physical injury. No cuts, no sword marks, no crushed bones from collapsed buildings. It was as if life had ended for them in an instant. And the mystery deepens. In the mid-20th century, claims began circulating that some of these bones carried traces of radiation far above normal background levels. Bricks from the city, too, were said to have been fused into glass-like fragments, as though exposed to intense heat. Skeptics dismissed these reports as exaggerations, but they sparked decades of speculation. Could Mohenjo Daro have been destroyed by something far more unusual than drought or war? Could it have been an ancient catastrophe, something so powerful, so devastating, that it left the city frozen in time? Theories abound. Some argue it was natural disaster, floods from the Indus River, earthquakes, or shifting trade routes that drained the city's lifeblood. Others whisper of darker possibilities, ancient warfare, advanced weapons, or even alien intervention. The evidence seems to resist neat explanations, leaving us in the uncomfortable space between history and mystery. But before we explore these theories, let us take a closer look at the world of Mohenjo Daro itself. The Indus Valley Civilization, also called the Harappan Civilization, was one of the earliest cradles of human society, flourishing around the same time as ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. It stretched across a vast area with dozens of settlements along rivers and trade routes. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, however, the Indus people left behind no deciphered texts, no written records that we can confidently translate. Their script, carved into seals and pottery, remains undeciphered to this day. And so, their story is told only through ruins, artifacts, and silence. Mohenjo Daro, their largest city, tells us they were brilliant urban planners. Streets were built in a grid system, homes had private wells, granaries stored surplus grain. There was a great bath, a massive public water tank that may have been used for ritual purification. The people of Mohenjo Daro traded with Mesopotamia and beyond, their goods carried across mountains and seas. This was not a backwater, it was a center of civilization. And yet, unlike the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Sumer, Mohenjo Daro left behind no grand monuments to kings, no giant statues of rulers. It seems their society may have been more egalitarian, organized around cities rather than empires. And this makes their sudden disappearance even more perplexing. If Mohenjo Daro was so advanced, what could have caused its fall? The most conventional explanation is environmental collapse. Around 1900 BCE, climate shifts may have dried up rivers, reduced rainfall, and weakened agriculture. Without food or trade, the cities would have emptied out. People may have migrated elsewhere, blending into other groups until the culture itself dissolved. It's a tidy answer, but it doesn't explain the skeletons found lying unburied in the streets, or the claims of fused brickwork. This is where the more controversial theories enter the story. In the 1960s, researchers began to notice that certain areas of Mohenjo Daro showed evidence of intense heat. Some bricks appeared vitrified, partially melted as if exposed to temperatures far beyond what ordinary fires could produce. While some geologists suggest this might be the result of accidental fires or even lightning strikes, others saw something more dramatic. Theorists proposed that Mohenjo Daro had been destroyed by a weapon of unimaginable power, an ancient explosion not unlike the nuclear bombs of the modern age. Their reasoning was reinforced by the skeletons found in the streets. Radiation readings allegedly taken from the bones were said to be unusually high. Though these claims are debated and often criticized for lacking rigorous evidence, they fueled the imagination. Could Mohenjo Daro have been the site of a prehistoric war, using weapons as powerful as those we possess today? The idea seems far-fetched until one remembers the ancient Sanskrit epics of India, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. These texts, written long after the time of Mohenjo Daro, describe wars between gods and men, filled with divine chariots, flying machines called vimanas, and weapons of terrifying power. One passage from the Mahabharata describes a weapon that explodes with the brilliance of 10,000 suns, scorching the earth and turning bodies to ash. To modern ears, this sounds eerily like a description of a nuclear blast. Could these myths be echoing real events from deep prehistory? Were they allegories or memories of something we cannot quite explain? And if so, was Mohenjo Daro one of the places touched by such catastrophic forces? Of course, mainstream archaeology rejects this idea. There is no definitive evidence of nuclear explosions in the ancient world, no clear trace of technology beyond the reach of Bronze Age societies. But the anomalies, the fused bricks, the mysterious skeletons, the sudden silence of a once great city continue to provoke questions. As we stand at the gates of Mohenjo Daro today, looking at its crumbling walls and empty streets, we are left with more questions than answers. What happened here 4,000 years ago? Was it climate change? Was it conflict? Or was it something far stranger, something we can barely comprehend? The ruins of Mohenjo Daro sit silently under the hot South Asian sun, but the questions they raise have never cooled. What caused this advanced city to collapse so suddenly? Scholars, researchers, and storytellers have all put forward explanations, from the logical to the fantastical. Each theory offers clues, but each leaves behind its own unanswered questions. Let us begin with the most conventional explanation: environmental change. Theory 1. The wrath of nature. Around 1900 BCE, the climate of the Indus Valley appears to have shifted dramatically. Geological studies suggest the once mighty Saraswati River dried up, and the monsoon rains grew weaker. Without reliable water, agriculture struggled, trade networks faltered, and famine likely followed. For a society dependent on crops and river trade, this would have been devastating. Flooding, too, may have played its part. Evidence shows that the Indus River occasionally rose and inundated parts of Mohenjo Daro. Some buildings were rebuilt over layers of silt, as if the inhabitants had tried time and again to withstand floods. But eventually, perhaps, the people gave up. They may have migrated eastward or merged with other groups, leaving the city to crumble into dust. It is a tidy explanation, and it may account for why the city declined. Yet it does not fully explain the eerie discovery of skeletons scattered in the streets. If the people had simply abandoned the city because of drought or flooding, why did so many seem to die suddenly, without burial? Theory 2. Conflict and invasion. Another theory looks to human conflict. The Indus Valley sat at the crossroads of trade and migration. Around the time Mohenjo Daro fell, Indo-Aryan tribes were moving into the region. Some scholars once suggested that these migrations might have brought violent clashes, that outsiders invaded, conquered, or destroyed the Indus cities. But archaeology complicates this theory. Unlike other sites of conquest, Mohenjo Daro shows little evidence of large-scale burning or destruction. The walls are not toppled, and no massive battle scars are found. The skeletons uncovered were not piled into mass graves or left with weapon wounds. If there was conflict, it seems subtle. Perhaps political struggles, smaller skirmishes, or gradual cultural displacement rather than one catastrophic invasion. Still, some argue that war in another form may have played a role. If rival groups within the Indus civilization turned on one another, the result could have been civil unrest, chaos, and collapse. But again, the evidence remains incomplete. Theory 3. The mystery of radiation. This is where Mohenjo Daro steps beyond history into mystery. In the 20th century, Reports emerged that skeletons found at the site contained levels of radiation far higher than normal background readings. Some researchers claimed that bricks and stones showed signs of vitrification fused together by extreme heat, as if blasted by temperatures far above what normal fire could produce. To some, this sounded eerily like the aftermath of a nuclear explosion. How else could a city from 2000 BCE show signs of sudden death, radiation, and heat damage? Was Mohenjo Daro the site of a prehistoric war, one that unleashed weapons of terrifying power? Skeptics quickly countered. They argued that radiation readings were exaggerated or misinterpreted. Background radiation in the region is naturally higher due to local geology. As for vitrified bricks, some suggest accidental fires or natural disasters could account for it. Archaeologists point out that no clear blast zone exists at the site. No crater, no collapsed cityscape resembling Hiroshima or Nagasaki. And yet, the story refuses to die. Why? Because it connects too closely with something else. Ancient texts. The Mahabharata connection. The Sanskrit epic Mahabharata, though written centuries later, describes a catastrophic war between great kingdoms. In its verses are descriptions of weapons so powerful they scorch the earth, blinding warriors and reducing cities to ash. One weapon is said to unleash the light of 10,000 suns, burning everything in its path. Another releases a firestorm that consumes entire armies. To modern ears, these sound eerily like nuclear blasts. Could the Mahabharata be preserving a cultural memory of real ancient weapons? If so, could Mohenjo Daro be one of the battlegrounds? Mainstream historians reject this idea, viewing the text as mythology, allegory, or poetic exaggeration. Yet alternative researchers argue that myths often contain kernels of truth, distorted across time. They ask, how could ancient poets describe weapons resembling nuclear bombs unless they had seen or inherited stories of such devastation? Theory 4. Alien intervention. If the idea of nuclear war in 2000 BCE stretches imagination, some push further still. They suggest that Mohenjo Daro's fall may have been the result of something not of this earth. Theories of ancient aliens propose that extraterrestrial visitors once interacted with early human civilizations, perhaps sharing technology or waging battles among themselves. If so, Mohenjo Daro might have been collateral damage, a city caught in the crossfire of a war beyond human comprehension. Supporters of this idea point to the suddenness of the city's end, the mysterious skeletons, and the possible radiation. They also highlight global parallels, sites like the Nazca Lines in Peru, the pyramids of Egypt, or the legends of flying Vimanas in India, which some interpret as descriptions of advanced aircraft. To critics, the alien hypothesis is a bridge too far, fueled by speculation rather than evidence, but it captures the imagination, because it offers a simple explanation for the impossible. If the people of Mohenjo Daro could not have created such devastation, maybe someone else did. The puzzle remains. Each theory, climate, conflict, radiation, aliens explains part of the puzzle but leaves gaps. Environmental collapse accounts for migration, but not for sudden death. War explains societal change, but not the absence of destruction layers. Radiation hints at catastrophe, but lacks consistent data. Aliens offer a dramatic answer, but little proof. Perhaps the truth is more complex. Perhaps Mohenjo Daro did not fall for one reason, but for many drought, political unrest, disease, and migration combining into a perfect storm. Or perhaps something extraordinary did happen, something beyond the limits of what we currently understand. What makes Mohenjo Daro unique is not just that it fell, but how little we know of why. Egypt left hieroglyphs, Mesopotamia left cuneiform tablets, China left dynastic chronicles. But the Indus people left a script we cannot read. Their voices are locked in undeciphered seals, their story frozen in silence. Until we break that code, Mohenjo Daro will remain a riddle, inviting every generation to guess at its fate. And so, the city on the banks of the Indus continues to provoke wonder and unease. Was it the victim of natural catastrophe, of human folly, or of forces far beyond our imagination? In the next and final part of our journey, we will explore what this mystery means for us today, what Mohenjo Daro can teach us about the fragility of civilization, the dangers of forgotten knowledge, and the haunting possibility that history may repeat itself. The ruins of Mohenjo Daro are more than stone foundations and broken bricks. They are a mirror reflecting both the brilliance and fragility of human civilization. For centuries, this city thrived. Its planners designed streets in a perfect grid, created a sophisticated sewage system, and built homes with wells and courtyards. Its merchants traded across continents. Its artisans crafted beads, pottery, and jewelry of striking beauty. And then, within the space of a few generations, it was gone. What does this silence mean? For some, Mohenjo Daro is simply a reminder that even the greatest civilizations are vulnerable to the forces of nature. Climate shifts, rivers that change their course, droughts that starve crops. These can bring even the most advanced societies to their knees. If this was the fate of the Indus Valley, then the lesson is clear. Our relationship with the environment determines our survival. We live by the rivers, the rains, and the soil. When they fail, we fail. Others see Mohenjo Daro as a warning of internal collapse. Advanced systems can mask fragility. A network of cities, no matter how sophisticated, can unravel quickly if trade breaks down, if political unity falters, or if social unrest spreads. The skeletons in the streets may be a symbol of that unraveling, a city unable to hold itself together when crisis struck. And then there are those who insist Mohenjo Daro represents something even more extraordinary, a glimpse of forgotten knowledge, of lost chapters in human history. Theories of radiation, nuclear-like weapons, or alien visitors might seem outlandish, but they endure because the ruins themselves raise questions. Conventional explanations cannot fully silence. Why were people found dead in the streets, unburied and unprotected? Why do some artifacts appear scorched, as if by immense heat? Why do ancient texts like the Mahabharata describe weapons so terrifyingly similar to modern bombs? The mainstream response is clear. There is no hard evidence of nuclear devastation of Mohenjo Daro. No crater, no melted cityscape, no undeniable chemical signatures. Archaeology favors simpler answers: drought, floods, migrations. Yet the allure of the extraordinary lingers because human imagination gravitates toward mystery. We cannot help but ask, what if? But perhaps the greatest lesson of Mohenjo Daro is not which theory is right, but what its disappearance says about us today. Civilization is fragile. Mohenjo Daro flourished for centuries, just as our cities do now. It had commerce, infrastructure, and complex organization. And yet, it fell. Not over thousands of years, but within a span of time so short, it left archaeologists stunned. We like to think our modern world is immune to such sudden collapse, but are we? Droughts, floods, political strife, pandemics, these threats still exist. Our technology may be greater, but so is our vulnerability. The fall of Mohenjo Daro whispers a warning: no society is permanent. The silence of the Indus script. One reason Mohenjo Daro remains so mysterious is that its people left behind no decipherable records. Their script, carved into seals and pottery, remains unbroken. Imagine if our own languages were to vanish, and future archaeologists tried to reconstruct our history without books, letters, or digital archives. How much would they misunderstand? How many myths would they weave to fill the gaps? This is the challenge Mohenjo Daro presents. Until we can read their words, the truth of their end will remain cloaked in silence. Myth as memory. Even if we cannot read their script, perhaps we can listen to echoes of memory preserved in myths. The Mahabharata, though written long after Mohenjo Daro's time, speaks of great wars, divine weapons, and cities reduced to ash. Were these pure invention or distorted recollections of real events passed down across centuries? Myth is not history, but it is not meaningless either. It is the way cultures remember trauma, victory, and loss. Mohenjo Daro reminds us that myth and memory may hold fragments of truth waiting to be understood. The alien question. The idea of extraterrestrial involvement is the most controversial, but it reveals something about our collective psyche. When we confront mysteries we cannot explain, our imagination often leaps beyond Earth. Were the people of Mohenjo Daro victims of powers not their own? Was their city destroyed as collateral in conflicts beyond human scale? The evidence is not there, but the persistence of the question shows our yearning to connect the human story to a cosmic one. What if it happened again? Perhaps the most haunting part of Mohenjo Daro's story is not what happened then, but what it implies now. Imagine a future archaeologist stumbling upon the ruins of one of our modern cities. New York, Tokyo, or Dubai, thousands of years from now. Imagine them puzzling over melted steel beams, scattered skeletons, and fragments of texts they cannot decipher. What stories would they tell about us? Would they imagine aliens, or lost weapons, or environmental collapse? Would they see us as advanced, or foolish, or both? Mohenjo Daro is not just an ancient mystery, it is a reflection of how fragile our own story might be. A city that lives on today, Mohenjo Daro is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tourists walk its ruined streets, staring at the brick walls that still stand after 4,000 years. Scholars sift through its artifacts, searching for answers. Local communities preserve its memory, even as erosion and neglect threaten to erase it further. It is ironic that a city whose name means Mound of the Dead still speaks so powerfully to the living. It stands as a reminder of what humanity can achieve and what it can lose. It is a riddle carved into clay and stone, a puzzle that refuses to be solved. Was it drought? Was it war? Was it radiation? Or something far stranger? The truth may be simple, or it may be beyond our imagination. But what matters is that the question endures, because in asking it, we recognize something essential, that our own civilization too stands on uncertain ground. The final word. So, what happened to the people of Mohenjo Daro? Perhaps they walked away as their rivers dried up. Perhaps they fell in conflict, their enemies leaving their bodies in the streets. Perhaps they witnessed devastation that fused their city in heat and silence. Or perhaps they were caught in a story that blends myth, memory, and mystery. A story we may never fully uncover. But one truth is clear: civilizations do not last forever. They rise, they flourish, and sometimes they vanish without explanation. Mohenjo Daro is not only the story of the past, it is a reminder of the fragility of the present and the uncertainty of the future. The next time you hear the name Mound of the Dead, remember this: it is not only a monument to what was lost, but a warning etched into history itself. Civilizations can end suddenly, without mercy. And the question that haunted Mohenjo Daro may one day be asked of us: what happened here? Where did they go?